My name is Daniela. Not so long ago, I had my younger sister by the name of Chloe. I've been dreaming about this for so long because I was an only child in my family. But my joy was not long. After a while, terrible things started happening in our family, and I think my little sister was involved. Parents adopted her at an orphanage. My mother couldn't get pregnant for a long time, but when she did, the baby was born dead. The mother could not believe it, and for a long time she could not recover from such a shock, which served as a discord and a cold relationship with father. They could not have any more children. Everyone pretended that everything was normal so that it would not affect me in any way, but something in me remained, something that from time to time ached in my chest. My parents put it all down to childhood trauma, and they didn't tell me much about their life. They decided that you cannot live in the past and should not drown in grief, and a decent time has passed since this tragedy. I grew up and turned 15. My parents decided to revive their happy family. They finally had another long-awaited daughter, and I have a little sister. This was the path to harmony in the family. If someone can't have children and someone has lost their parents, then why not to help each other? To not brighten up the lives of people who have lost their most valuable things? After all, my parents took a long time to come to this. They had the strength and courage to adopt Chloe. She was 12 years old. My parents wanted a younger child, I will not hide it, but she was a gifted and capable child, which immediately attracted attention to her. Well-mannered, polite, talented, with a great interest in drawing and studying, and a good attitude to all adults and teachers of the orphanage. This set her apart from the noisy and naughty children. Her first day at school was very difficult for her. I supported her in every possible way and accompanied her to school lunch and recess. School children poked at her and called her a foundling. The latter made Chloe lose her temper, and she pushed one of the boys and ran out of the school crying. Months passed, and this boy had a fracture. He was riding at a considerable speed on his bike because he was afraid to get wet on the road because of the rain, and his joy was unlimited because this bike was stolen from him, and he found it a couple of days later in the back of the house. Maybe one of the boys joked, he thought. I thought so too, until I found out that the bike was faulty. His father said something about pedals, bearings, threads. I don't know the details. But I definitely suspect who is involved in this and who went to such a cruel act. It is not to pour a bottle of water on the offender and not to stain the chair with chalk. It was a deliberate intent to harm and take revenge on the person. But who would believe it? And I chose to remain silent, sometimes even doubting my perception. Until the chain of coincidences and accidents began, when children were fighting or getting into trouble, they were seriously injured and severely damaged. Chloe was always there and surprisingly not at all involved. This was a huge noise for our school because it was famous for its reputation of excellent, good, and decent students. The puzzle was quickly put together when, at the insistence of her mother, Chloe was told to stay away from such incidents and pay more attention to her studies, setting me as an example. It all quickly turned into a wild scandal. Mother first questions Chloe's poise, but father, who came home late from work, did not believe his wife and said that this was just a teenage rebellion and she overestimated the importance to it. In the morning, my mother found my dead kitty in her bed, which was clearly smashed with a rock. Immediately, my mother rushed into our room and pulled Chloe out of her bed, and she got up and smiled ominously, as if nothing had happened. Began to comb her hair in front of the mirror and asked what they could do to her. Beat her? Give her back? Daddy won't let me do that. He loves me. At worst, I'll accuse you of periodically beating me up. I hope we understand each other. After this conversation, my mother and I buried the animal. The parents' relationship began to deteriorate because he didn't like his wife's behavior toward Chloe. He wasn't there. He didn't know the whole truth. The final push to discord was the mother's argument that the shelter has no information about the origin of this sinister Chloe. It turned out that she was transferred from another orphanage that burned down in the fire. She was silent for a long time and did not answer questions. Nothing was preserved, and the decision was made to leave her, not to throw her out on the street. I haven't lived with my father since. They moved in with my grandmother. We see each other occasionally, but I don't know what's going on in Chloe's life. And today, I found out that my grandmother died from a gas leak. She did not like Chloe, considered her a stranger and negligent. They blamed it all on my unfortunate father, who long ago got drunk after the divorce and stopped caring for his daughter and participating in her life. It looked like an obvious murder, the motive being the house. Yes, and Chloe confirmed conflicts between her father and grandmother on the grounds of property. I didn't believe it because they had a great relationship. And why would he do that if the house was registered to him and she was helping him live? Just live. Everything was already on her slender shoulders. They decided to send Chloe to our house until she came of age. I wondered why all this was happening. Why is she coming back? No, I understand why. But what can we expect? Revenge? Reprisal? Retribution? What other surprises will present us with the fate of Chloe? Who is she and what is her purpose? I reread and saw a lot of stories about mental illness and abnormalities, movies about children from orphanages, but it all looks like fiction and fiction. No one believes them, and I understand them. I write this with fear and with tears in my eyes. I'm afraid for myself and my mother, and I'm afraid to even imagine the consequences. I'll have to live with her for 3 more years, 3 whole years, if I live to see this day.
Hi everyone, my name is Mike. I have a little sister named Jessica. Once I found out about her secret, which she never told. To say that I was in shock is to say nothing. When I was 6 years old, I was joyfully informed that my mother went to the store for my sister. My mother was gone for 12 days, and then all sorts of aunts and neighbors ran in with gifts and booties, and everyone was happy and looked at something lying on my bed and constantly yawning. They told me that this is now my sister. After a good look at it, I asked my mother only 2 questions. Mom, couldn't you have picked a better one at the store? And why is she always making faces? That's how my little sister came into my life. As a child, like all other boys, I wanted a younger brother to play together as hooligans, but fortune gave me a little sister. Fortunately, Jessica was a kid, and we could play different boyish games. She was no worse than a boy, and could even stand up for herself. But with the arrival of my sister, all the attention in the family switched to her. All my toys were no longer mine. She could easily have come and taken anyone she wanted, and if I objected, my mother told me not to be greedy, especially for my sister's sake. Since childhood, my parents had taught me to care for and protect her, that I am, as an older brother, responsible for her. So I made sure that something did not happen to her by accident, or that she didn't put any dirt in her mouth. She always wanted to taste everything. All the items she had in her hand dragged into her mouth. I couldn't always keep track of her. Once we played with her in the courtyard of the house. She is fast and loves to run. She ran around the yard like mad. She ran so hard that her legs knocked down and she fell and hit the slide. Immediately, blood appeared on her face. I was in a panic, and I'm afraid of blood. I ran home as fast as I could and called my mother. She saw Jessie and screamed in fear and called an ambulance. While the ambulance was driving, my mother and I tried to stop the blood. Fortunately, the injury was not serious, just a split eyebrow. There was no concussion. But from the moment she starts running, I try to be close to her and run after her. She thinks we're playing catch up, but she can run like this for hours. Sometimes it's really hard to keep up with her. Growing up, everyone has their own interests, and we were no longer able to spend time together so closely. Our communication consisted of teasing each other. I didn't even know her friends or what she was interested in. She sat in her room all day, sometimes just going out for dinner. It was strictly forbidden to enter her room, and I had no particular desire to do so. I had my own amusements. One evening, passing by her room, I saw a laptop on her bed. In it, all the time came some messages without stopping. Usually, her door was always closed. Jessica went somewhere and forgot to close the door behind her. It was really interesting to see who so relentlessly writes. I couldn't resist going in to see who it was. It turned out that her friends in the group wrote to her. Everyone asked to show them something. I understand they wanted to see something from my sister, but what exactly was not clear. At the moment when I was reading, in the room went Jessica and quickly ran up and closed the laptop. She angrily looked at me and kicked me out of the room. The question of what she was supposed to show her friends remained in my mind and did not give rest. I had to find out what it was, and I began to watch her. I tried to notice any changes, but nothing strange happened. Even went to her room one night and stole her laptop, but there was a password that I didn't know. All my attempts resulted in failure, but fortune has given me another chance. Once, I accidentally noticed a black spot on the skin under Jessica's t-shirt, something like a birthmark. But as a child, I didn't notice it, and if I did, I would have noticed it. I didn't know what it was yet, although I had various guesses in my head. Then I decided to cheat. I went without knocking to her room and said that I knew everything. I didn't even know what I knew, but my sister was in shock. First of all, for the fact that I went so unexpected, and that I knew everything. I saw panic in her eyes, and then she started crying and begging not to tell anyone about it. I honestly did not expect such a reaction from her. I said it was a joke. I did not think she would start to cry. I hadn't seen her like this. She began to calm down and admit that it was a joke. She barely regained consciousness. And since then, there is still some kind of secret. She had no other choice. She had to share her information. She picked up and showed me her belly tattoo. There was a drawing of a butterfly. I was really shocked. The fact is that our family strictly followed the rules in sequence. We were not even allowed to go out or hang out. And if our parents found out about the tattoo, the scandal would be strong. She told me that she has a best friend named Emily. So this girl was also very nimble. And unfortunately, her appendix was removed as a child. The scar was large and not beautiful. She didn't know how to cover it and decided to get a tattoo on the scar. But she was doubting and didn't have the courage to do it. And my sister, as a best friend, decided to support her and agreed to do a tattoo with her. So they did both. After hearing the story, I seemed to understand that friends need to be supported. But so, it was too much for me. Jessica asked me not to tell my parents, otherwise she'd get in a lot of trouble. I decided to keep this secret with her. After all, she is my sister. We must support each other. I promised that no one would find out about it, but she forbade me to do such reckless things. And of course, as an older brother, I advised her to behave well. So I had a little secret with my sister. Of course, it is bad that our parents were not told. I feel guilty in front of them. But I hope that in time there will be a convenient moment when my sister will be able to admit about her tattoo.